This is her. All rise.
Sorry,
Good.
you weren't waiting for me.
No. Thank you. Good. Does everybody have a copy of the handouts? Will we get cracking?
You have a copy?
All right, it's just a hard copy of everything we emailed out essentially.
Yeah.
All right, hello, let's get started. So I am going to call this meeting to order.
Oh, no, I didn't get the drafts.
And I just want to start with introductions because I was unable to attend in person last month. But I did call in, so maybe you recognize my microphone distorted voice. If not, I'm Matt Souza. I'm a senior planning associate with the MRB Group. On the phone, we have my colleague Eric Cooper. I think we're gonna try to make this kind of common practice where, you know, one of us might be in attendance unless it's like a really heavy agenda or something like that. And then one of us is either remote, kind of taking notes or in the background. But Ron, I'll kick it on to you. I don't think anybody knows you.
Susan, chairperson.
Or Susan, yeah, sorry. So you can run the show if you'd like.
You don't want me running the show, believe me. I'm Sue Charlin. Good to see everybody. Do we go this way?
Julie Maslin.
Tim Ford.
Adrian Bellis.
Julie LaRue.
Sarah Weidenborner.
And Ron Brand.
And I'm Leah Thomas.
Great. Well, welcome everyone. It's lovely to meet all of you in person. I think I don't really know many of you actually outside of Ron and briefly Leah. So, all right. We are gonna get cracking on our agenda. Did everybody have an opportunity to look at everything that we sent around on Friday? So we have a copy of the minutes from our last meeting. Everybody have a chance to look at those? Any major changes, alterations? All right, if not, I think we're all set to approve those. We will get to more specifics on kind of the plan website that is now live for the public engagement plan. But these will get posted electronically to that website as well. All of our minutes, major documents, et cetera, once they've, you know, gone through this committee and looked at, reviewed, et cetera.
And also file a copy with the town clerk.
File a copy with the town clerk. That is perfect.
I don't think I got the handouts down there.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, so assuming we're all good with these, you have a hard copy, you can light bedtime reading if you wish. And then we're gonna move on to the public engagement plan. So this is a draft public engagement plan that we provided to you guys. What this is basically going to outline is just the role of the steering committee, just the process of stakeholder engagement and identification, which we'll get into a little more specifically later in the meeting. Some engagement activities, and then kind of an outline of our public forums and communication plans. So the whole purpose of really our exercise tonight with this is to review it, discuss it, see if there's any major changes that this committee has to it prior to finalizing it, at which point we'll again file it with the clerk, I assume, and then post it on the project website. And then use this to kind of guide our public engagement for this plan. So I'll just go through it. I don't want to, you know, read it to you all, but you know, like I said, there's key elements, the public surveys, The key elements of our stakeholder engagement plan are public surveys, one of which was already completed, a very robust one, stakeholder focus groups. What we're doing right now, the publicly accessible steering committee meetings, public information sessions that ultimately we'll have. And then, of course, office hours to address, any concerns, feedback, et cetera, outside of our formal meetings and public engagement. So this is the steering committee meeting. All of our meetings are the first Monday of every month. It's just outlined in this plan. So that is codified. And it lists every member of the steering committee. I don't believe we met everyone or we missed anybody. We should be all set there. And then I'll get into kind of the meat and potatoes of the plan, starting with stakeholder identification and engagement on page 4. So we worked preliminarily with Ron and Supervisor Inglesby to kind of identify key stakeholders, groups, organizations that may have an interest in parks and recreation planning, adjacent municipalities, Tennessee Finger Lakes Regional Planning Association. I think a list of that was provided at last meeting. So don't know if it's really changed all that much since then. And the whole purpose of this is to, see what other municipalities, other organizations are doing relative to parks and recreation. And hopefully that'll inform our process. So if we had an opportunity to look at that, were there any additions to that stakeholder list? We've had it for quite some time now. Are we pretty prepared to put a bow on that? As far as who we're going to target now.
I think there were just the additions that we talked about this time, but
Okay.
I don't think you guys already incorporated.
Yeah, I probably should have provided, I will provide via email, maybe the final version, I guess, if we're all in agreement that the additions that we made at last month's meeting are kind of going to be it, and then we'll finalize that. I'll send that to everybody, and then we'll post that on the website as well. Eric, would it make sense to append that to the public engagement plan, or should we keep those separate? Anybody else have any?
I think that it's fine to append it. I might just remove contact information.
Fair. Yep.
I mean, most of it's public anyways, but.
Right, but just, yeah, that makes sense. So yeah, let's go ahead and do that unless anybody has any objections. So the engagement activities on the next page, it basically just outlines the process that we're going through. Public survey was already completed. We had our kickoff meeting last month. And then there is a project homepage on the website. It currently contains, I think, the agenda for tonight's meeting. We are going to post, we'll work with the town this week to post the agenda from last meeting. Now that we approve these minutes, we'll post these minutes. As we finalize documents, they'll all go up there, as well as key announcements and everything. On the town website, there also is the calendar that kind of outlines all of the meetings and goings-ons. We are up there, it was identified as today. So anyone from the public, certainly our meeting is advertised, accessible. They should be or could be aware of it. And we're going to keep it as such throughout this process. So then we're planning on having stakeholder meetings. And like I said, I'll get into a little more specifics. Based on that list that we developed, that process started maybe in earnest last week and will be ongoing throughout the month of August. Then we'll have steering committee 2 tonight, steering committee 3 in September going on, planning our first public forum in November. That's when we plan to review a lot of more substantive documentation and get some input. Come back and huddle up for steering committee 6 in December, sort of piggybacking off the results of that public forum number 1 in November, then host public forum number 2 in January. That's really ultimately goal there is a presentation of the draft plan. And then any refinement that occurs out of that public forum will result in a town board presentation and public hearing on February 2025, and then we'll get into adoption of the plan. So that's kind of an outline of how we plan to engage the public and an outline of this process. I know we kind of went over it a little bit last meeting, but this is really codified in this document now. Talked about the project website, online outreach and promotion materials that will all be posted. Then
That's we like soccer or something or no? That November 4th steering committee, the public forum or whatever, or no, our steering committee, November 4th. That's the day before elections, so we won't have this room available. Are we still gonna have a meeting in the town hall?
Well, we have the conference room that we could all meet.
Okay, I just wanna,
Yeah.
I know it's still out of ways, but it's just one of those, so I was looking at the
No,
dates, I was thinking, oh.
that's a
I think
great
gonna be
point.
Bad day, cause they'll put the voting machines in here and they won't let anybody touch this room.
Right. And then the other option is to meet in the basement.
Okay, that's fine.
There's
We can-
meeting
I
rooms
just-
down there.
Because we're taping it and video recording it here, I just didn't know how well that works down there, so,
It doesn't,
okay,
it's just
the way life goes.
the way it is, but that's a good point.
Well, that's a great point, and you know what?
I'm trying to get off topic, but you're.
No, that's-
Across all the dates.
That's perfectly on topic. We can. Now that I know that, and I didn't think about it, didn't occur to me, so that's helpful. We could probably workshop an
Yeah, we can meet somewhere
idea
else
of,
if Ron's having.
or I
it.
set my laptop off and put a camera on and stream it that way. We could troubleshoot it, I'm sure.
Okay,
The
Well,
meeting
we-
room does,
If we have it in the meeting.
if we have it in the meeting, yeah.
That's Zoom access.
Mhm.
yeah, and there's time to figure it out. It's not like it's next month. but-
Yeah, no, so that's helpful. So we will get on top of that, though.
We just won't tell the fire marshal we've occupied the room, we'll be okay.
There you go. So now you stated it on the record and
Yeah.
recording.
That's official now, we're not gonna tell him.
There you go. All right, so that is that's the website. I think we're pretty good, for there. We also, out of those stakeholder engagement, meetings that we have, I'm gonna draft up some notes. We had 3 of them last week. I'm in the process of developing those notes. Those will ultimately be distributed to you and be published on the website as well, once everybody has eyes on them. We'll get into public forums. It's just a little more specifics on how they'll operate. The first one being the visions, goals, and analysis of the plan in November. It's gonna be an open house format, about 3 to 4 hours. For people to come and go as they please, can stay for as long or as little as they want, and provide feedback on the plan. They'll be extremely well advertised. Hopefully we'll get great participation. I know we had pretty solid participation for the public survey, so hopefully that has created some buzz in the community that would then in turn generate attendance, but I think ultimately we'll lean on a bunch of you as, you know, and myself too, as town residents to get the word out. For sure, I know our Facebook page in our neighborhood will,
Oh,
it's like half the town. And then workshop number 2 in January, will be a review of the actions and priorities, which ultimately will result in kind of the finalization of the document. And then with communication plan, so this is mainly just for press inquiries to the town about this project. So I imagine any of those would be run through Ron. He would just distribute those to the committee as appropriate. So, I mean, I've been in a part of these processes where sometimes the press reaches out, they want to attend a meeting. Certainly, it usually picks up more towards the adoption phase, the end of the process, but we just outlined a little procedure for in the event that occurs and how to handle that. So that was just a brief overview of this public engagement plan. If everybody's comfortable with this document. Anybody have any additions or comments?
Yeah, I want to just put a comment in there. You'll see that one of the things that we did is we identified a period for this plan update. And that goes from 2025 when the plan's adopted through 2035, a 10-year period. Okay, the current plan went from 2017 to 2022, something like that. We're taking it through the next census period.
Mhm.
And also giving time for some of these planned park projects take a lot longer to realize than, and the programs themselves that the rec advisory board gets involved with. Putting everything together and making it work. It's a labor of love and it takes time. So we wanted to give ourselves a little more latitude there in that. So while this says the 2024 update, this is 24 and we're updating it. When it's adopted, it'd be known as the 25-35 plan. As it's shown on page 2. Any questions on that?
Would you like us, Ron, to update the covers of all of these to say like 2025-35 plan?
I just think the 2024 update is fine for right now.
Okay.
I mean, keep it simple. It's what we're doing in 24 and get there.
Yeah, right. But ultimately, the plan will be the 25 to the 35 Parks and Recreation Master Plan.
Because it's going to be, like you say, March, April before it's adopted.
Going back to the website and promotional, do you know when the next newsletter is? And is that something that you want to?
My understanding of the next newsletter is it's at the printers.
Oh,
Okay,
how about the next one after that?
the next one after that usually comes out in October,
Okay,
November time period.
If it is closer to October, we should definitely
promote the meeting.
promote the workshop.
Oh, we'll promote them. I
Yeah.
promoted them in this one.
Oh,
Yeah, all right.
Great.
Okay.
Well, then that we should just hammer. 'em
Just
with-
hammer it.
Yeah, hopefully everybody will read it and not just throw it in the trash.
I always read the
I always
I-
read Everybody reads the
But we're people around this table might not be the most representative. It's the reason we're all sitting here. But all right, we good on the public engagement plan? Excellent. As always, and as it states in the public engagement plan, open door if you have any comments, if you are like me and you wake up at 2 in the morning and you have an idea. Fire off an email. Don't call my.
I know Matt mentioned it, but I just wanted to reiterate how important the steering committee is for public engagement, because you're kind of like our local liaisons. If you can just do everything you can to share this project with your neighbors and social media and get them to the website. Anybody, anytime can send comments for us to consider.
Yeah, absolutely. So next, kind of piggybacking off of the public engagement plan, we did begin stakeholder engagement meetings last week. Eric and I met with the supervisor of Canandaigua briefly, just for very preliminary conversations. The intent was really to introduce ourselves, introduce the project, make local leaders aware that this project is occurring, and just very preliminarily see, what is going on in their community relative to park and recreation. And then ultimately take that information, and that may be helpful in informing our process. It would help Farmington leverage regional resources, regional continuity, anything that, kind of precipitates from that. So we met with the supervisor of town of Canandaigua. We met with Ontario County Planning Department. We got just about every single person in that department on the phone. And I met very preliminarily with the mayor of the village of Victor on Friday morning. Just like I said, we have some notes that I am going to kind of formalize in a document. Very similar to summaries of meetings that you and I had that we put together, follow the same format for consistency's sake. But yeah, so with Ontario County, it was interesting conversations. I think they have, not surprisingly, much less of a focus on facilities, but much more on a focus of like a sort of a top-down approach, maybe being a little more engaged in funding opportunities, grant matching, things like that. So certainly something to keep in mind as we go through this process and talk about implementation. Ontario County Planning should be a willing partner in a lot of that. Like I said, not really looking at facilities per se, but would be heavily involved in trail connections, any sort of like easements, cross access easements, and any intermunicipal partnership that they could help kind of foster, given their, you know, regional purview. And then bike planning, a lot of certainly something they're focused on. They have actually were very complimentary of, you know, Farmington's design guidelines with subdivision and how our town is extremely proactive with pedestrian friendly amenities coming from developments. So, you know, they credited the town a lot for kind of being a leader in the county as far as that goes. But as we all know, it's also a goal of the plan to make connections where we can and make recommendations. There's always going to be gaps to fill as far as bike and pedestrian planning goes. So that was great. It was a really solid conversation. Like I said, I'm gonna summarize that in a little more detail and distribute that to you all. You'll take a look at that. Also with the city of Canandaigua, or sorry, town of Canandaigua. Again, they also much more facilities oriented and much less programming focused. I feel like we ultimately are kind of going to be a little bit of the opposite. We're going to, I think, focus a little more heavily on programming rather than facilities. Because I think the last iteration of the plan was pretty focused on just developing parks that weren't even in existence back when it was drafted. They talk about from programming perspective, it was more just access to existing amenities that they may have. Just like maybe creating programs around transportation for seniors to and from the YMCA or other recreational opportunities, just because they might not be a pedestrian friendly way to access. They might not have mobility needed to access it via pedestrian amenities. And then, yeah, I mean, they also were very interested in just, they said, well, we would always like to work with our neighbors as far as trail connections, bike pedestrian connections. They do anticipate quite a bit of residential development in the next 10 years during the lifespan of this plan, and that, from that growth that Farmington is currently experiencing, they might take a page out of our book and promote pedestrian connections, but that may require some intermunicipal agreements and working together. So also something to keep in mind as we flesh out the content of this plan in terms of, just regional partnerships, intermunicipal agreements that could be recommended to occur. But like I said, a lot of this was very preliminary. And then with the Village of Victor, so the Village of Victor does not really do a lot of their own parks planning. The town of Victor manages a lot of the Parks and Recreation programming facilities on behalf of the village. But that said, I mean, the village was or the mayor at least was very interested in, trail connections and cross partnerships, especially with the Auburn Trail that runs right past their offices, and did also bring up the idea of the rec center, which I think everybody is kind of clued in on as a want for the region. Certainly this little cluster of towns, Farmington, Victor, maybe even Canandaigua, but certainly Farmington and Victor. We mentioned that, so I told them that, we will probably look at preliminarily potential sites for a rec center, what have you. I'm sure recommendations will come out of this plan ultimately. I guess just recommendations for sites. I don't really know. We'll see how that whole process plays out. But I didn't want to get too in the weeds on something like that, because everybody knows there's a lot of moving parts that would go into the development of a recreation center. And yeah, those are the discussions we had. I also got a chance to meet with Julie. Thought we were gonna meet for coffee, but she doesn't like coffee, so I sat and had coffee. But yeah, I was able to just pick her brain on parks and recreation opportunities in the town, kind of what was going on, get a lay of the land. I don't know if you want to, I don't want to put you on the spot and provide like a huge update, but I thought we had a really constructive conversation. I'm gonna steal a line that you told me. She just talked about how the mission of the Parks and Rec Department, as she sees it, was just creating opportunity. It was just making programming, providing facilities, undergoing activities that create recreational opportunities for the town residents. So I thought that was like fantastic. I thought that was something that could go on the covers, like Parks and Recreation Plan, creating opportunity. But yeah, please, I just wanted to give you the
Yeah.
floor and
So, we discussed kind of, what our vision for the future and, what we thought this, master plan can assist in our goals. And kind of holes where we thought could be filled. So we discussed like the whole providing opportunities and, one of the big holes is, we do have a lot of like opportunities, but they're kind of limited to like 3 seasons, right? So how do we plug that winter season? So we talked about some sort of indoor facility. Doesn't necessarily have to be a so-called like rec center, but even if it's an indoor where there's pickleball and a turf field and a walking track. So we discussed different levels of indoor facilities and, it doesn't have to be a giant rec center that's staffed with 20 people and things like that. One of the things I thought what we could do that we don't do is, providing like access to equipment, paddle boarding, kayaking, those type things. I was kind of around the Erie Canal and I saw a place and you can rent a kayak for like $35 for an hour. I don't remember how much it was, but, providing some type of access to equipment that people could check out, take to the lake, bring it back. Same thing with winter, snowshoeing, cross-country skiing, those type of things. And even with what's the big thing, I said it a minute ago, not the tennis, but pickleball. We were talking about the seniors really would like an indoor pickleball facility, even providing like paddles and balls there. Like, I mean, most people have their own, but maybe like, I don't know anything about it. And I want to go play with a friend and try it out. Sure. See if I want to invest. So just providing like, kind of that's my view of providing opportunity. And also using this exercise to put us in a position to apply and receive grants. So, making sure that we're kind of doing what we need to do in here to find those items that we want to, we're looking 10 years down the line, right? So what can we put in here now? Like 10 years ago, did we think, maybe 10, maybe 20 years ago, did we think the Auburn Trail or the trail we have now possible? Like, what do we see for the future and how can we put it in here to help us gain funding and grants to expand, our opportunities? So that's how I see it. Kind of a broader picture like that. So, and whatever, there could be other things I think we're missing. So I don't want to exclude anything, but those are the things that were kind of the top of my head.
And that'll grow with the town.
Yeah. 10 years ago, our town has really gotten young. Like I remember 10, 15 years ago at Victor, most of the kids lived in Victor. Now most of the kids live in Farmington. So, just finding those activities, like seeing what's going to be big, what can we, I even asked like, what's the hot thing, right? And it's like trails. Well, we did that. So what's the next hot thing? Right? Pickleball is a big one, but.
Sidewalks.
Sidewalks, yeah. Skate parks. I know. I mean, I would love a neighborhood pool, but whatever.
Well, it means splash pad.
Splash pad, I tried to get one
Everybody is-
in the Auburn Meadows park, but
Really in the splash pads and
Um,
dog
they said
park.
no?
dog park,
Dog park, that was the one that.
they know, they didn't even want a second soccer field. They definitely did not want anything that would bring in outside traffic.
I got
I
you.
mean, I threw the splash pad, remember the little splash pad? Cause I was like, oh, the one in Geneva is very popular.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The traffic.
Yeah, there's always gonna be a NIMBY element to a splash pad. There's always gonna be a NIMBY element to the dog park, which actually made me think, so in my stakeholder outreach, Village of Victor just had a dog park open up.
Yeah.
I've not been to it, I don't have a dog. But, I don't know if anybody has, you nodded, did you go?
I've not, I've
Good.
heard about it.
Okay,
And I've seen something on a Facebook group or two. I think they're very strict. They check ID, they
They-
charge a
yeah.
lot of money.
The
if
mayor
you're not a
was-
Resident.
the mayor was like,
Wow.
there's like a lot of rules.
Mhm.
And,
I lived in Monroe County for theirs.
okay,
They're very strict and they're not gonna let you in if you
Right.
don't live there.
and that's
Wow.
what, yeah, it was, and I don't, the conversation for a later day on, I don't even know if that's the purview of this committee is to necessarily decide rules and regulations of a dog park. It's just more of a high level. Yeah, you wanna govern the town access of them.
Still has a dog
Put a
park.
leash on it.
It's extremely successful. They
Right.
they do not check your IDs. They actually have two now across the road from each other in Bud Park, if you're familiar with Shortsville. And one is for bigger dogs and one is for smaller dogs.
Yeah.
Oh,
Wow.
I wouldn't even thought of that.
That's
Yeah,
really
Yeah,
you should
so
know that.
Village Victor has one where there's two accesses and one's a small dog access, one's a large dog access, so they can kind of.
Based on size or personality.
Yeah, right, that's, yeah, oh, that's my daughter, right, you'd be the small dog, right? But, yeah, so, my intent is to go to the Village of Victor and just like take photos and maybe snap a picture of those 10 commandments that govern the usage of it, but, I will share those photos with the group, as available, and, maybe, my understanding is it's fairly new, so it could be sort of a inspiration or what do we not want to do, something like, go either way, but,
Oh, yeah, it's pretty good.
the mayor did say that, since it's gone in, it's been wildly popular. Yeah, and was that, so you're referencing the public survey?
I didn't remember that it was so high up. on
Yeah,
the
that's,
list.
Well,
my understanding is that was like a reinforced by public opinion, was that a dog park is one of the wants.
so I participated in an exercise we had, Ron, you might have been on it too. We had a group of Syracuse students, maybe engineering, graduating seniors, and it was part of their graduation project. And they developed, we have some acreage right over here, and they developed a plan for it. So one of the things on there is we put a dog park. We put a dog park. It's literally like fences and trash bags and trash cans. You know,
Correct.
like,
Yeah.
it's not anything crazy, but we did, that was one of the items they did, the dog park. I don't remember what else we put in there, but
Well, Tim's got it memorized by now. They looked at the existing park layout.
Mhm.
And they could combine
Mhm.
the 50 acres. Keep in mind that that's not designated parkland yet. Okay, because there hasn't been identified need for it. Maybe that's something that
we
this.
have to do here in our plan.
Okay, so some of the things that they talked about over there was indeed a dog park at the northern end of the sports fields. Additional sports fields and realigning the ball fields here. Interconnecting a roadway out to Colette Road. And also trying to figure out how or what kind of use, if nothing more than storage, that existing barn could have. And there's grant monies out there that the state likes to spend on refurbishing old barns and making them part of a public facility. So it's a wide open entity there that you're looking at. Once a year, you need parking for how many cars? Quite a few.
Yeah, usually parking is a big issue with Well, the fireworks, but not only that, once you put more sports fields in or whatever.
Yeah, I think the idea here that the students, they were architectural graduate students from Syracuse University, had was to not necessitate the town having to build new facilities somewhere. Retrofit and redesign this facility to accommodate, make a better use of this existing site in adjacent lands, keeping in mind that some of it's going to be needed for maintenance facilities and other activities of the town. So, you know, they talked about hiking trails, they talked about, I think in their overnight camping for Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, organized groups, things of this nature. It's a beautiful setting back there. If you haven't walked it, I recommend you do it rather than in the summertime, not when it's so hot, but not in the wintertime, it's like we did. That cold morning, but it was good exercise. We have quite a bit of land out there that we could make really good use of.
So we do need to include in our update, something, you know, regarding the growth of the town and wanting to expand our park footprint.
Mhm.
Yes. And programs.
Yes.
Yes.
That's something that we need to think about as we continue to grow, demands continue to grow. At what point do we look at more than just a part-time recreation director?
Mhm.
When do we look at something more permanent? And I'm not saying that we need it today, I'm not saying tomorrow. But as other municipalities have found, is as these services and continue to grow, it puts more administrative demands on somebody that right now is running crazy out there with all the
One more week.
summer activities. Okay, shut up.
Oh, no, you're by all means. So, that was this kind of the gist of, the stakeholder outreach. Do you have a question?
Yeah, what, I mean, in the old plan, I mean, was there certain projects that got done from the old plan before we? From the 17 to 22 plan?
Yeah, so it was
I mean,
very,
obviously things that don't get done because some of it might be a brand new park, but I mean, was there other stuff that we did implement out of it or anything that was completed?
yeah, it was, I mean, it was very facilities heavy and we did put together a whole, I think Susan pulls it out and
Is this the one
unfortunately,
you have a list?
I don't have a,
Was that from the first meeting or something?
yeah, I don't have a
I
copy.
wasn't here at the first meeting,
Oh,
so I don't
yeah.
have any
Yeah,
of
yeah.
that stuff.
Okay.
Out or anything, so.
Well, and to be honest, I don't think 4 weeks ago, the website was necessarily live, but all of the documents and handouts from last meeting, now that we've kind of had eyes on it,
Are on
will
there?
get posted. Well, they will be.
Okay.
We're kind of in the process of really kind of building that out now as our informational resource. But yeah, so that's basically an analysis of just all of the goals,
That were
and
in the old-
objectives that were in the old plan and then their current status. Tim was actually very helpful in helping us, you know, fill in the gaps and flesh out what we couldn't glean from ourselves for ourselves, but
Okay,
Can I add one more thing to my part? Because I forgot to mention it. I also, one of the items I thought was a big deal I wanted was an inclusive playground,
Mhm.
similar like Canandaigua has. I know we do have, our playgrounds do have, you know, aspects of them that, you know,
ADA compliant.
yeah, and can be enjoyed by all children, but I would like it would be nice if we had a dedicated one. You know, similar like Canandaigua's, which I forgot the name of it.
Motion junction.
Yes,
And that would get really busy too, so it's kind of, if you have two, it's more.
Yeah, if you catch it at the right time,
Mhm.
because I'm a frequent user, so. But yeah, so that was our stakeholder engagement. I actually talked about that with the town supervisor at Canandaigua. Kind of put a plug in his ear, just saying, it's certainly I remember to recall our conversation and brought it up and said, well, that's something that the town may be interested in, so we might pick their brain as far as,
And the Kiwanis was very big in doing that too. They'd be another one if we. And you had questions about that, they'd be a big one to.
that's good to know. Jot them down. But yeah, so those are our stakeholder meetings. Like I said, as we continue to have those over the next month, I know we're planning the town of Victor, I think in the next couple weeks, probably going to attend a board meeting for Boughton Park. And discuss the process and get some feedback from them, probably in September. I don't think we'll have an opportunity to get to a board meeting until next month. But, yeah, and then we sent kind of an email out to all of them. We got a pretty good response from about half, just always fairly typical in these processes, and then we're gonna have to light a couple fires with the other half. But that outreach will be ongoing for the next month, and as we get information back and provide those summaries, we'll send them out to you kind of as they're available. We good on the stakeholder meeting update? Any other conversation? We're gonna plug along and go to the Planning Foundations report. So the purpose of this report really is just to review existing documents related to Parks and Recreation from either the town of Farmington, the county, adjacent municipalities that may serve as an influence, inspiration, or kind of a roadmap for how Farmington would ultimately like their plan and process to play out. Admittedly, this is not totally complete. There's a lot of documents we're taking a look at. So I think on another page, we're still in the process of providing summaries for a lot of the plans. In our conversations with Ontario County, we did have a great conversation about their draft Parks and Recreation Master Plan, which is currently going through the adoption process as we speak. So that's one is like hot off the presses, and certainly has some high level applicable regional goals and recommendations and objectives that I think it would behoove us to pay attention to. So we are building this out. Eric admittedly was very glad to put this document together, so I'm going to throw it to you, and not to throw you under the bus, but did you have anything specific that you wanted to highlight in this document?
I would just say, so the comprehensive plan provides kind of like broad categories that I think are sort of necessary for us to evaluate, and we'll kind of get into some of that as it relates to like the existing conditions analysis. But so, it sets out a goal that this plan should build off of, that the park should be accessible, attractive, diverse, providing those opportunities. And then some more kind of specific elements, connected by sidewalks, bike lanes, retaining or creating parks, bike lanes, public open space in conjunction with development. So some of the stuff relates to how development is incorporated, and then creating an integrated system, including undeveloped open space. So some of those things, it's just kind of to highlight that we're going to touch on and give some focus to, because it's already been called out in the comprehensive plan, so it's sort of deserving of that extra focus. And then some of these other ones that I've already looked at, the Town of Victor plan, there's a ton in the Town of Gandago plan, Town of Manchester, Town of Farmington. They have some more specific projects that I think are relevant to the Town of Farmington. The Town of Victor particularly, they've called out a number of bike lanes being proposed, like in County Road 41, leading to Ganondigan, and then ultimately heading south towards Boughton Park. So if they did make that connection to the Town of Farmington line, having, again, kind of bike lanes or some sort of connectivity to what they are proposing and hopefully will build, will help create the town's network and connectivity to regional assets. Town of Canandaigua, at least it relates to the town of Farmington. It's largely just connecting the Auburn Trail, which is something they've been trying to do and hopefully are getting closer, especially with the water line project and coming through. And then the town of Manchester, I think that a big thing for that is the Canning outlet and using that as sort of like a blue way. It's an interesting asset that, well, it's the town of Manchester, Shortsville, Village of Manchester. It's an interesting asset that they have. It's something that I think could be more of a draw if that is brought in. It's maybe something that the town of Farmington residents could utilize. If there's some way to connect to those downtown areas to the outlet that runs through it, it could be a neat connection to build more regional recreation assets. The town of Farmington is obviously has tons of great trails, and importantly, I think for that one, again, they kind of just have bike lanes proposed throughout, which if the town of Farmington can connect to, it would connect it to the Empire State Trail and I think it's New York State Bike Route 5 that kind of runs almost parallel to Empire State Trail. But so it would have the potential to connect the town of Farmington to statewide assets, which I think is important for a couple reasons. One, it's just generally good. You know, people from the Monroe County, Rochester area can be connected to the Finger Lakes through the town of Farmington. And then also the state generally looks more favorably on things that can connect to, let's say, the Empire State Trail or other state resources. And I'll get more into the state trails plans and outdoor recreation plans. I haven't done it just yet, but obviously I'll probably update once we've done that.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. But yeah, that's the intent of this is to really do an evaluation of those existing assets that Eric ran through. We're going to finish our analysis of the rest of the documents that we haven't gotten to yet, and then we'll hold off on publishing this obviously until it's pretty much built out, but we'll send that around to everyone to have eyes on it. Maybe talk about any applicable documents at our next meeting relative to this, and then put a bow on it and go from there. Does anybody have any more questions, concerns? Are there plans that we're not identifying that we don't know about?
I didn't have anything
No?
like that, but I was wondering, in the Ontario County plan, like what kinds of things are in that plan that we need to be aware of or be consistent with? Is it mainly trail connections, or are there other things that I guess I'm not familiar with how that works, like that we should be thinking about for future funding or
Mhm.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, to be perfectly frank, I haven't really taken a deep dive into that plan outside of like, reading the executive summary. So I'm
Yeah,
getting there.
I haven't looked at it either. I'm
But-
just curious, like what kinds of things, like I don't know exactly how the park funding.
Yeah, I mean,
but-
I think for at risk of getting a little ahead of myself as far as like next steps for a meeting, but we're gonna start really diving into like an inventory and analysis of like town assets, town programs, town facilities, what we have, what we can leverage, et cetera, at the next meeting. I think as part of that analysis portion, we'll have a complete summary in this document of that plan, and then we'll certainly be able to look at the goals and recommendations as they pertain to the town of Farmington or just the large region in general, and see, what are they recommending, and then what ultimately should be leveraged in our plan. I think it would be really nice if both. Yeah, go ahead, Eric.
I was just gonna say, I didn't mean to interrupt you, I'm sorry, Matt. But I know that in our conversation with Ontario County, and from what I've seen so far, looking at the plan, they kind of established boundaries in some sense of what they are looking to do. They kind of told us, and it says in the plan, that they're not generally interested in creating parks that are kind of active recreation, ball fields, stuff like that. They do have some, but generally where they support like camping or stuff like that. Things that can enhance what they feel is the appropriate type of recreation that they're looking for. And so they see themselves more as, what do they say, conservation, where like if they can conserve important lands and, you know, provide access to the broader public for them. So where it's access to Canada Lake or natural areas in the south end of Ontario County, they view that as like a good opportunity. They don't really call out in the plan. I think they maybe call it one potential new park, but they don't say, oh, we should look at this area, that area. They don't really call that out. They did in our conversation though say that they want to be a partner in a lot of this stuff and help coordinate some of them, although they may not be the party leading the charge to do some of that preservation and everything.
Thanks, that's helpful.
Yeah, and like I said, we'll flesh that out and certainly provide a fairly robust summary of that document so that we can have a little more informed discussion, certainly at next month's meeting. Are we good on the planning foundations? Excellent.
Oh, one other very quick note. I also reached out to Monroe County and Wayne County for parks planning that they've done, and I just haven't heard back.
Perfect. So the last document we really have to review tonight is the existing conditions analysis, kind of like Julie and Ron that you talked about. This kind of looks into the growth of the town, the need for facilities, and the need for the programs, not, you know, from a facilities and programs perspective, but it just looks at, you know, growth and demographics, and somewhat of an inventory of, you know, existing conditions. So, so it looks at, you know, park facilities, 8 town parks. There's the map on page 3. That has the 8 town parks mapped, and it shows where they're distributed in the town. And then going off of that, it talks about trail facility. So the trails map, which is the next one, really kind of zooms out, looks at all the adjacent municipalities relative to Farmington in the middle and all of the trails that exist and connects. You can see there's the Auburn Trail. It's clearly a very robust one. There's the we have our sidewalks, which on an 8.5 by 11, it's a little difficult to glean, but the sidewalks, you know, you can see in the not surprisingly southwest corner of the town. It's very robust sidewalk infrastructure, where a lot of the development is occurring. And then there's other trails identified in adjacent municipalities that, you know, may serve as opportunities for trail connections, recommendations that this plan could possibly think of. You look like you're itching to say something.
I am, Ron. We've discussed going in with other groups and part of a park that we declined to a number of years ago to be involved in.
That's, you're talking about Boughton Park
Yes,
in Bloomfield.
yes.
Yes,
Do we need in this exercise need to include Fountain Park?
I think Susan survey that she did found support for investigating that, right?
Fountain Park.
Oh, yeah. Are you talking about just like putting it in this map? Or
Well,
just like-
or in this whole, in the master plan, because, you know, it's something we've had informal discussions about and with the people who are part of Fountain Park. And if that's something, visit will, you know, I think it will cost some financial resources for us to buy into that, if we have the opportunity.
You've got a park that has one major municipality and 2 that are fairly rural, not
Mhm.
going very fast. Maintaining funds to operate and sustain that park facility is gonna become a challenge,
Mhm.
okay, if it isn't already. And, that's an area that we need to look at. Is it something we need to better understand what it would take? Yes. I think that's what the public asked for. Or what are we talking about? What kind of funds would we be looking at? Of course, another question that has always been out there, and it's not my question, but is this park a prime candidate for meeting the stated goals now of Ontario County planning for a county park facility? That you would have a much broader resource base for and to sustain parkland operations for everybody. I'm.
Yeah.
Those are the kinds of questions that we need to think about and discuss.
Yeah, and I think part of the analysis portion of the inventory analysis that this
Mhm.
group will do is, talk about, I think. Probably have a pretty robust discussion on Fountain Park. I mean, what do we see, like, what did the public survey say in regard to Fountain Park? What do we think as far as like a feasibility would be? What would be the implications to Farmington? What would be the implications to adjacent municipalities? What are the pros? What are the cons? How much this plan should discuss that, in our opinion. You could do probably an entire Parks Master Plan just on the future of Fountain Park, so, but that said, I think this plan should absolutely address it. I think we could absolutely discuss it and, maybe, put some high level recommendations on marching orders for the town, maybe on how we think they should proceed in that regard. Maybe something even to loop in Ontario County Planning, just to see. I mean, from a county park perspective, it's a fantastic idea, but you have to have willing partners involved as well. So, yeah, it's definitely a conversation we're gonna have, and I'm actually gonna attend, I'm probably gonna attend Fountain Park's board meeting in September, just to kind of update them on our process and maybe glean some feedback from them. So, not that I'm gonna say, hey, give us your park, but,
From what I understand, two of the partners are supportive, one is not. Does that sound?
I don't know.
you probably know more than,
Okay,
certainly know more than I do.
I don't know where I heard that from, but I seem to think that one of them is not so.
Hmm.
Gung ho about us joining.
Yeah, and I think we would just have to go through what all of that would even look like.
And in the end, wouldn't that be a referendum? If you join, maybe?
I don't know the answer
Oh,
to that,
okay.
okay? A referendum on
Well, just a vote of,
just the
Town.
three municipalities that,
or a vote of the residents of Farmington.
I guess if there's a tax levy, there would be, but
Right,
if there's not.
if there's no tax levy, then great, let's
Yeah.
do it.
why haven't we done it before?
Yeah, and the discussion closed, no.
Give us your price. Yeah, so. We'll have those conversations, maybe we'll even go so far as to,
Yeah.
look at feasibility,
And, and I don't know how much, this committee was aware of that, so when I saw this and I'm like, oh, Fountain Park, we've had many discussions about Fountain Park.
Yeah, no, we were, I mean, it was brought up in
Yeah.
preliminary discussions with Ron and Supervisor Inglesby. I mean, it came up as a concept that has been flitting around.
Mhm.
But nothing more, really, so.
Again, keep in mind, you've got a very conservative area out there of open land that perhaps a lot of the residents don't feel there's a need to open the doors and let more in, okay? But if it becomes a financial issue down the road, that's always, something that tends to change people's minds.
And for some reason, I think that that's what is kind of coming about. There's a financial need for a partner. So I hear.
Yeah.
I think one of the big considerations on that as far as Bolton Park is how much money do we want to put into other towns for a park and not take Hudderston?
Yeah, we will certainly have conversations about that. I imagine even as soon as next meeting, start evaluating this, but moving on to the existing conditions, this is where we break down demographics in the town, in so much as it could influence park facilities, programming, et cetera. This will really serve as a foundation for, you know, sort of a needs assessment, if you will, as far as programming goes. Population wise, it should be no surprise to anybody that there's been tremendous growth in the town, which is a fantastic thing, but it also opens up a tremendous amount of opportunity. 19.8% growth rate in the 2010-2020 census period. Estimated to be around 15,300 right now, which if you look at the growth rate between 2010 and 2020, I feel like might be conservative. So 2029, or I guess it'll be around 15,000 in 2029, which again, I feel like is rather conservative. Would not be surprised if Farmington surpassed that number in the next census period, which is coming quicker than I think. It's involved in the last one. That's so great. Anyway, personal aside. So there's 5,855 households in the town, average household size of 2.5. And again, similar projected household growth. Not surprisingly, a lot of the development concentrated in that southwest corner, with, you know, Auburn Meadows, Beaver Creek Estates, and the neighborhoods around there. So age, we have a median age of 37 to 39 years old, which is rather young.
Yeah, about
For-
10 years.
Yeah, for most municipalities, certainly, certainly in this area. Which again may inform from a programming perspective, certain demographics that we want to cater to, but you know, everyone who's 39 becomes 89. So
It's your Jack Benny.
that's your Jack Benny here. And then the next page is just a population by age graph. So you see, I mean, there still is a good amount of population. If you look at the last number, the 2029 number, I mean, you see there will be an aging population. It pretty much stays pretty similar. Or far surpasses 2010 numbers, getting into the 65 plus population. So by 2029, significantly more 65 plus individuals are anticipated to be there, which, you know, would certainly support our idea of programming facilities that cater toward seniors as well. And then going into income, also the good thing is that there's income has been increasing throughout the town since the last census, is good. It grew 16.9% in 2010 to 41.7% of the town earning $100,000 or more. I believe that's households income. And then that graph in the bottom just illustrates that graphically as far as broken down between 2010, 2014, 18, and 2022. So you'll see a good amount of middle income individuals that, you know, progressively migrated in 2010, you know, making that 50 to 75,000 has really kind of pivoted in 2022 to that 100 to 150,000 demographic. So we do have a town with some means at least graphically, so, however, in so much as that would influence, programming, be it, as Julie talked about, maybe the rental of, equipment. No, I don't know if it would necessarily be like financially inclusive to consider things like that.
Can you, for the report, can you add that median income to this text?
Yes.
I don't-
Yep. And Eric, feel free to chime in if you have.
I figure you've got that number, it's just not.
Yeah, we'll throw that in there.
Yeah, we can add that easy.
Yep.
Matt, you're doing a great job.
And then education. Is the next. Phase, so in 2010, we had 56% with some college, that stayed unchanged in 2022, 56%. And really the shift there was a lower percentage of high school or less and a higher percentage of graduate school. Also, could be a correlation, not necessarily causation, with income increases in the town as well.
It's a big change.
It's a very large change. That's quite the shift, right? From 37 to 26% in high school or less, and then from 7% to 18% of graduate school. Yeah,
You don't see that.
you don't see that a lot. Like 10% reduction and a shift of almost like 2/3 in the other direction. So the town is attracting, educated higher earners. At least so says the data. And then last one talks about access. So like I said, it's important to appreciate that older adults, disabled persons, and children will walk at a slower pace, may have trouble with access. So certainly something as a concept to address. And then this map, this is probably my favorite map in this report. It talks about density of addresses lacking parks. So basically it's of all of the town parks with 0.1 mile buffer in the dark green, and then a 1/4 mile in sort of the light green, and the very lightly shaded outer ring is a 1/2 mile. So this is all the areas in the town that are within 1/2 mile of a park or less. And then it overlays like the dense population or the density of the population that falls outside of that. So right on the, not surprisingly, right on the Farmington Victor border, kind of on that 96 corridor, there's pretty dense population that falls outside of that 1/2 mile buffer. The rest of the town, there's, in the northern west portion up by Pumpkin Hook, I mean, there's a little bit of a density pocket right on the edge of that 1/2 mile buffer. This is that far one down is that Quaker Meeting House Park, which is like a postage stamp,
Right, does that,
or Meeting House Park, not Quaker.
does that really count?
The Meeting House Park is a town, but I mean, it's
I
a
know.
postage stamp of a park, but I mean, maybe there's an opportunity to do something with that creative. I mean, we might have to put our thinking caps on for that, but could be something to do, certainly in a corner of the town that doesn't have much else. And then, not surprisingly, I mean, you look at just, intersections and interchanges, and there tends to be somewhat of a denser population.
Every Saturday, there's always people there.
Yeah, I mean, well, I mean, if you put a picnic table, they will come.
It's cool.
So
It's only like 1 or 2 cars, but there's usually someone there.
it's only 1 or 2 picnic tables. But yeah, I mean, and you know what, there is something to be said for the fact that, I mean, if you're a renter or if you're a person who lives in a, more dense area, and sometimes you just want to be out somewhere where you feel like you're out in the middle of nowhere and sit at a table and have lunch, you don't need much more other than just a connection to nature. So, so something to think about as we we build out the recommendations of this plan. I love this map just as far as the story it tells. And I think a lot to be gleaned from just an access perspective. So I think when we get into the analysis portion of this planning process and start really going through the hands-on engagement portion on, what we all like and feel, I think maybe we'll have a pretty solid hands-on activity next month. Try to get some ideas and creative juices flowing, but this is always something to keep in mind as far as, the geographic disbursement of parks and recreation amenities.
That, the area of, that's, south of 90, but on that Victor line, is that, there is a lot of population with those apartments in there.
Yeah.
Is that kind of what that is?
Yeah, that might be, for sure. Eric, do you have any insight? I mean, that's probably, it might be it, certainly.
Yeah,
There's
yeah,
also-
that's the apartments and the manufactured homes.
Yeah.
I put it in the narrative, I think, but just because it's not that it's completely without kind of like parks facilities, like they do have playgrounds and
Mhm.
but they're kind of private and small. But they certainly don't have the town park facilities and sports fields and stuff like that.
Mhm.
In terms of like establishing need, you mentioned that being important. Is this the primary measure of that, or are there other measures that you use, like, I don't know, it would be like acres per resident or?
I think from an access perspective, this certainly would influence need. But you also want to ensure that you're not only paying attention to like the high earning section of your town or, I mean, it would stand to reason that, the portion of the town that has a younger age population, if you wanted to actually get that more granular by like census tract, has more parks amenities, but that might influence need for senior facilities, programs, et cetera, that serve a population that maybe has this different density based just on age disbursement. It would be interesting maybe to throw like a map with ages, just a little more granular look. I'd like to see that. It would be interesting to see the age disbursement.
Right.
Um,
Or like if you didn't know the town and you just looked at this map,
mhm.
you'd say like, wow, there's all these people, here. that have
Yeah.
Nothing.
It looks like a lot of unserved areas,
Right. I mean, again, if you didn't.
but in
know.
reality, population is
A
just.
lot of agricultural
Right.
land.
Yes,
Right,
yeah,
yeah,
no. I
right,
mean,
yeah.
if you threw a population map and then overlaid this, yeah, I
Right.
mean, you get a very different story. So that's a point well taken. I think maybe an age disbursement, certainly would influence, need as
Right.
well.
Not that any of the funding agencies are gonna look at that and say like, well, we don't agree with you. We think you should put a park over
Right.
here, I don't know how it works.
So Ron, at the end of Marks Road and Hook Road right there. There's a piece of property right there. Is that considered parkland? Or is that just town-owned land?
It's just town only and
It's
it's
not designated.
never been designated as parkland.
There was talk about that being the dog park back years ago, probably when that 2017, 2022 plan came out.
There's also talk about a dog park over by Lake. Which has a floodplain running through it, which pretty hard to fence. That's where 2 and 2 didn't add up to 4. So to speak.
Is there enough room at Beaver Creek?
Is there what?
There's it all built out for fields?
All built out.
Yeah, it's pretty much fields. The one area is designated for the lodge.
Yeah, I think that's the only other facility for Beaver Creek is the lodge.
Right,
That,
right. But other ones are sports fields, so,
Yeah.
or a dog park.
I think our best piece is the one right here. The big acres we have right here. For the town. Marston. Broke that chunk of them.
Yeah, I didn't know if that was parkland or.
Not that I've ever heard.
No, okay. I've heard it before that somebody told me it was parkland. Okay.
And then the last map really on this,
Yeah.
and then we can move on, is just, there are just environmental resource constraints. If you look at this map, and in the text, Farmington is home to the largest wetland in the county, which just north of
Really?
the thruway. If you look at this map, it's really enormous. So you're not going to build and develop anything. And actually, if you look at this map, there are a considerable amount of resource constraints in the eastern half of the town. Just as far as creeks, wetlands, what have you. So, just something to keep in mind informationally, that, you know, you can look at a map without anything on it and think, well, there's no parks over there. Why is that? And then, oh, wait, you're constrained by, you know, things that you didn't think of, be it creeks or environmental barriers. So, just from an informational perspective, I thought this map was helpful. And I did not know that we had the largest wetland in the county, so.
Aren't wetlands sometimes also an opportunity?
Yes, and so that's actually a great point. So we will look at, yeah, like passive recreational opportunities that exist in the town to take advantage of just existing natural resources that we may have. I think discussing like an inventory of those resources in so much as we're able to within the scope of this project and how appropriate that is, but certainly recommendations and identification of those resources and how, you know, how we could leverage these passive opportunities, creating opportunity. Again, I'm gonna go back to again and again.
Well, and if the county's focus is on
Yeah.
partially on conservation and.
Yeah. And that's pretty typical. Like a county would be a lot more conservation focused. They're way more set up to engage local land trusts in that regard. And then towns, cities, villages would be much more facilities programming focused. At least in general, not to, you know, put everybody in a box, but. So that is the existing conditions analysis. Does anybody have any comments? I know I'll make that one change with the median income. If you guys think of anything, let me know. And we'll make those edits and updates. Otherwise, we'll finalize those for the most part and put up on the website.
I also wanted to Julie's point about like the all inclusive playground or park and recreation areas. I wanted to add in here information on disabilities and break it down by age groups and stuff, because if they're going for funding, it might be good to have that data.
Yeah, so maybe we'll add a little more robust data analysis as far as like need based on different demographics, certainly the age population. I'd love to see an age distribution map. So we'll add that, make those changes and edits, send those to the committee. As always, if you'd like to any comments real time, let us know. The last bit of the agenda that I just wanted to go through real quickly, because Eric and I were talking about it together and we just thought it would be a worthwhile discussion. Preliminarily, just put the bug in your ear, but the existing plan that we have, these chapters, it's really just thinking, we don't have to make any decisions tonight, just throwing it out there to think about the plan format. So right now the chapters have like introduction and objectives, characteristics affecting the town. I think largely those can, you know, be fairly similar. Planning, roles, programs, recommendations. We're of course going to have a goals and objectives section. It'd be crazy if we didn't. We'd certainly have an action plan section. It'd be wild if we did not create an action plan around those goals and objectives that ultimately come out of this process. But really it's chapter 3, it's that analysis. And we were talking about, well, does this committee, and maybe you haven't had eyes on this plan to the extent that you could, you know, have a robust enough conversation tonight, but we were thinking maybe at the next meeting, think about the analysis of this plan and based on how it was done in 2017 and maybe how do we like it? Do we want that analysis portion to look differently? What sections maybe are no longer applicable? Is it too text heavy? Is it too graphics heavy? And so I just wanted to throw it out there as just a plan format because it'd be helpful for us to know on the front end, and then we can really guide a lot of our analysis portion focused on, you know, how we ultimately want that, which is it's the meat and potatoes chapter to look in this plan. So I just wanted to put a bug in everybody's ear prior to, you know, next meeting.
Is that on the website or something? for-
Yes, it should, yeah, the plan is on the website. We can I'll send a link out to everybody so it's easily accessible. Make sure we're all looking at the same thing, the latest, greatest version as well. But I just wanted to throw that out there for everybody, and then I guess I'll just open it up to any committee members or town staff. Anybody have any comments, questions?
Yes, it seems all the towns around, including our town, would like to see a connection with the trail system.
Mhm.
Is there anything in the making? Or any ideas on how to do this at this point?
Well, I think when we get into the analysis portion of this planning process, we're certainly going to look at more in-depth trail amenities that currently exist and connections that potentially be made, and then ask ourselves the questions, well, what needs to occur in order to make that connection? Is it landowner agreements? Is it negotiation of easements? Is it an intermunicipal agreement? I don't know the answer to any of these questions, but that'll be fleshed out during our analysis portion, but this plan will absolutely look at trail amenities and the ability or the opportunities that exist to make those connections, you know, and probably even go so far as a prioritization of the low hanging fruit versus the pie in the sky long-term trail connections.
On these walking trails, can they ride bicycles on them or?
Yeah, they would be multimodal, yeah.
Because that's one of the main concerns I've got from people is hooking these trails together and having routes to bike.
Yep. Yeah, I know cycling is a huge thing. I mean, that came up with both the town of Canandaigua in our conversations and Ontario County in terms of just, there's some constraints because a lot of state routes are very popular for bicycling, and, you know, development of shoulders on state routes is kind of out of the purview of the town, to a degree. So, but, you know, taking the opportunity for county routes and town routes for bicycle amenities, but the trails are great. I mean, I'm the big baby who wouldn't ride a bike on the side of the road, so I would totally ride a bike on a trail.
Yeah, much safer.
So,
I don't think that's.
Yeah,
big
I've
baby.
been too many
No,
I don't wanna do it either.
well, I won't run on the side of a state route. I don't want anything to do with a bike,
Yeah.
but
Is there any possibility that the railroad trail here now, they got quite a trail along, I know we used to snowmobile on.
mhm.
Is there any talks with the railroad? Anywhere where they could let that be a walking canal?
So it doesn't necessarily concern this town so much, but when I did speak with the village of Victor's mayor, the village has explored opportunities to reuse that or to use that railroad as a trail. The issue is that there's one landowner that is kind of objecting to the conversion of the rail line with the hopes that it could potentially come back online in some way, shape, or form.
There's a whole committee that's.
Yeah,
That's dedicated to that.
Yeah.
Because they used to run to the installation.
yes, and that's the only active user of that line right now, and it is county-owned corridor.
Really?
I believe so. So it's publicly owned corridor, so that's a great point.
Yeah.
It's absolutely an opportunity. It's something the village of Victor is, I know for a fact, is currently exploring, and the mayor is very pro
Are they still
trail
using it?
development with that corridor.
Are they still using the line?
On very rare occasions.
Yeah.
Yeah, like once a year or
Like
something.
I know for when they do like the Santa train, I don't even know if they go to Victor anymore.
Well, and they said the issue is that, and this is coming from the mayor, and this is just, you know, like a very informal conversation that we had on Friday, really, but according to him, I mean, yeah, it would in order for it to come back online, it would require a tremendous amount of investment in just bringing it up to like current standards. And that level of investment would be totally inclusive of any usage that would occur from it. So,
Point is we have a railroad crossing here on Colette Road that has one of the signals that's been down now for what?
2 years.
It's
Oh,
been down a
really?
while.
It's
seriously?
been a while, yeah. It's been a while,
I didn't know that,
I didn't
but there's
either.
no trains.
but there's no trains.
So how far does that, so the county owns,
I believe it owns
All the
that
way into
corridor,
Victor. Right
all the
away?
way into
That
Victor.
ends in Victor.
Yeah, and you'll see like on the Auburn Trail, and then it picks up, I forget the name of the other trail that runs parallel to the Auburn Trail.
so this whole stretch here
Yeah.
that goes all the way through?
Yeah.
I mean, it seems to me like it, to your point, to have another voice
Yes.
from our town, you know, supporting that whole idea and this whole idea of collaborating with other communities to get that done would be huge.
The Genesee Transportation Council has identified the Lehigh Valley Black Diamond Line for conversion to a pedestrian bicycle
Oh, and
trail.
that's this one.
Yeah, the one that goes into the village of Manchester and then eventually connects with
Yeah, wow.
Ontario Pathways and then over to Phelps and that area, and then also the Ontario Pathways down through Stanley that connects with the Finger Lakes Trail. You know, if you take a map and put it all together, you kind of get a much clearer picture.
Yeah, the trail system in Ontario County is insane.
Yeah, and so I think we would be remiss if we didn't look at the trails that exist in Farmington versus possible potential trails, make recommendations for those, and then what sort of connections need to occur in order to make those come to fruition. And as Ron said at the beginning of this meeting, we're working with a 10-year purview with this plan because these things take time. Trail planning especially takes time, just based on where it is, getting ownership agreements, and it's hard to build consensus in 2024.
I'm going to, at a later map, I'll have all of the trails, bike facility connections that are existing, which is what you see on the map on the screen, but also proposed in these various plans that we're looking at, have that mapped. So you could see, you know, if everything is done, you know, what these corridors would look like, what you would be connected to. And one of the things I saw as I was looking at some of like the parcel data was like, okay, so if you're looking for trail corridors, you want something that's kind of, you know, long, generally connects a huge area, and oftentimes it's like one owner. National Grid owns like basically a corridor running like this. Sorry, that's not going to be right on line, but that's essentially it. Runs kind of along the railroad, and then it actually touches the land the town owns here, and then it kind of shoots north up towards like Pumpkin Hook, and it actually continues, I think, up to like there. So it would almost connect you to the town of Farmington trail system, and to, you know, the Erie Canal Trail, the Empire State Trail, and Route 5. So if you could have that as a trail, that'd be a pretty great one.
Yeah, so lots of discussion to come.
Yeah, cool. Exciting.
Do we have anything else as far as just open discussion? Are there any comments from the public in attendance tonight? All right, hearing none. Next steps for the meeting, yeah, I think we're gonna really try and take a deep dive into kind of a more of an inventory and analysis, and have some more robust conversations about evaluation alternatives for design, layouts, facilities, programming, the 50+ acres of land neighboring parks, more of a discussion maybe regarding Boughton Park. And yeah, so
I think the biggest stuff is the pre-existing parks we own to make
Yep.
sure they're up to a high enough standard for everybody to enjoy, because I feel like sometimes they are.
Yeah, I know there are a lot of recommendations relative to facilities improvements from the last plan, some of which are outstanding and like ongoing, just, just not quite there yet, but still already codified and moving in that direction. I think, yeah, we should evaluate, maybe revisit that and see, what was not done that still needs to apply, and then, what are the gaps that exist in the town? Like trails is a great example, but other parks, facilities, programs. Maybe we'll design a little hands-on kind of exercise, which are always fun to, like I said, get those creative juices flowing. Ron, do you have anything? Bring us home?
No, I just think that it's got a good foundation. Let's keep building on it, and just want to remind you that the first Monday of September is right around the corner. But that's Labor Day. We're not meeting.
Yes, thank you for that reminder.
Okay, we're meeting the second Monday. So that Matt has extra time over the Labor Day weekend to finish writing.
Yeah.
Exactly right. I'll be at another wedding.
This is a great start. We really
It is.
appreciate this great information and. Good.
Great, well, please, and we'll finalize all of this. We'll get it up on the website. Tell your friends, tell your family. Public forums are gonna be around the corner. Looking at the calendar, we're gonna be at like Halloween and Thanksgiving, like,
Yeah.
wait,
No, it's-
it's already August. But yeah, so I will adjourn the meeting. We're all set. Thank you. Anybody else? I'm sorry.
Madam Chairperson, anything?
No.
Chairperson. Yes, you can formally adjourn the meeting.
Yes, okay, well,
Sorry.
thanks everyone for coming and great work, you guys. and
Okay.
Adjourn.
Stealing your
I thought I could
authority.
Play a really important role.
Really stealing your authority is terrible.
No.
Well, if you haven't noticed, I'm a
Sorry.
talker, so. All right, thank you, Eric.
Thank you all.
You can go to bed now, Eric.
If he's sick, is that one? Oh, no, they're just saying.